Morning pre-K. This Monday, our sight word is O-U-T, out. Let's go out and play. I bet a lot of you have been doing that, going outside to play while you're at home. We are out of cereal. Oh no. What will we do when we're out of cereal? Guess we have to go get some at the store. I want to go out to, where would you like to go to? Maybe you would like to go out to Sesame Place. It's not open right now, but one day it'll be open. I looked at it the other day. It looked really sad, like it was missing everybody. I want to go out to, Miss Dean wants to go out to the movies. She can't wait for them to open again. She really likes to go to the movies. I want to go out to the park. Actually, I did go to the park on Saturday. I got me a sandwich, and I went and sat at the park and just enjoyed the trees and the water. I want to go out to what? Think of some things you would like to go out to do, all right? And look for out in your books. Listen for out when you're talking to people. At my house, you hear it a lot because I have a dog and 2 cats, and they like to go out a lot so that they can come in so they can go out again. Okay, we are almost through. Let's read some more Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Look at that. There's just a teeny, tiny bit left. And we were listening. We are in chapter, what was that, 10? No, chapter 11. Oh my goodness. And no, it's 10, it's 10. Okay. And we didn't quite finish, but if you'll remember, and you might not remember because it's been the weekend, but Alice was spending the afternoon with the griffin and the mock turtle. And the mock turtle was telling her his stories. And then they wanted her to tell him a story about her adventures. So she began telling them about her adventures, beginning when she first saw the white rabbit. And the 2 creatures sat very close to her, one on each side, and opened their eyes and mouths very wide. It made her quite nervous, but she felt better as she went on with her story. The mock turtle and the griffin kept quiet until she finished. You're good listeners, aren't they? After she was done, the mock turtle drew in a long breath and said, "That's a very curious story." It is. "It's about as curious as it can be," said the griffin. "Shall we try another part of the lobster quadrille?" Remember that was a dance they were doing. "Or would you like the mock turtle to sing you a song?" "Oh, I would love to hear a song," Alice replied. So eagerly the griffin said in a rather offended tone, "Well, it's your choice. Sing her turtle soup, will you, you old fellow?" The mock turtle sighed deeply and began in a voice sometimes choked with sobs to sing, "Beautiful soup, so rich and green, waiting in a hot tureen. Who for such dainties would not stoop? Soup for the evening, beautiful soup. Soup for the evening, beautiful soup. Beautiful soup, beautiful soup. Soup of the evening, beautiful soup. Beautiful soup, who cares for fish, game, or any other dish? Who would not give all else for 2 pennies worth only a beautiful soup? Pennies worth only a beautiful soup. Beautiful soup, beautiful soup, beautiful soup of the evening. Beautiful, beautiful soup." Because He's singing the soup song, and it's kind of sad and kind of happy because he's a mock turtle. And they used to make soup called mock turtle soup. But actually, it was mock because it didn't have real turtles in it. I guess someone should probably tell him that. Sing the chorus again, cried the Griffin, and the mock turtle had just begun to repeat it when a cry of, "The trial's beginning," was heard off in the distance. Okay, here's a little picture of him singing. You can see his tears about how beautiful the soup is, but I think he's feeling sad because it's turtle soup, but like I said, it's not real turtle soup. "Come on," cried the Griffin, taking Alice by the hand, and it hurried off without waiting for the end of the song. "What trial is it?" Alice panted as she ran, but the Griffin only answered, come on," and ran all the faster, and behind them they could hear the mock turtle still singing, "Soup of the evening, beautiful soup." And there they go, running. Isn't the Griffin an interesting looking fellow? He's got big wings and a beak. Griffins are make-believe, but they're in lots of stories, and they used to put them up high on buildings with the gargoyles to keep an eye on things. And that is the beginning of chapter 11, Who Stole the Tarts? Okay, we know about that Queen of Hearts. She wants everybody's head off, but it never really happens because her husband, the king, goes along behind her pardoning everyone. But she just likes to yell it. But now it looks like we're having a trial, so we will see who stole the tarts. The king and queen of hearts were seated on their thrones when the Griffin and Alice arrived. There was a large crowd around them, all sorts of birds and beasts, as well as the whole pack of cards. Remember, we met them earlier. They were walking cards. The knave was standing before them in chains and with a soldier on each side to guard him. And next to the king was the white rabbit. He had a trumpet in one hand and a scroll in the other, and in the middle of the court was a table with a large dish of tarts upon it. They looked so good that it made Alice hungry when she looked at them. I wish they'd get the trial done, she thought, and hand out the refreshments. So here we all are at the trial. The queen, the king, the white rabbit. Here's the knave. He's part of the king and queen's house. And there are the cards that are soldiers. I don't know if this will have, yes it does, good. There's actually a poem about the tarts and who stole them. But there didn't seem to be a chance that this would happen, so Alice started looking around to pass the time. Alice had never been in a court of justice before, but she'd heard all about them in books and seemed to know the names of nearly everyone there. That's the judge, she thought, looking at the king. He did not look comfortable at all. And that's the jury box. And those 12 creatures, some of them were animals and some were birds, are the jurors. The 12 jurors were all writing with pencils on little slates. What are they doing? Alice whispered to the Griffin. There can't be anything to write down yet. The trial's not begun. They're putting down their names, the Griffin whispered in reply, so they won't forget them before the end of the trial. Silly things, Alice began to laugh out loud, but she stopped when the white rabbit cried out, Silence in the court. The king put on his glasses and looked around to see who was talking. Okay, here's the jury box. When you grow up, you will get asked to be on jury duty. Those are people who help the court and the judge, when there's a trial, to decide what's true and what's right. All grown people have to do that sometimes. Alice saw all the jurors were writing down silly things on their slates. She also saw that one of them didn't know how to spell silly. He had to ask his neighbor for help. Those slates will be filled with nonsense before the trial's over, thought Alice. Harold, read the charges, said the king. The White Rabbit blew 3 blasts on his trumpet, and then he unrolled the scroll and he read. The Queen of Hearts, she made some tarts, all on a summer day. The Knave of Hearts, he stole those tarts and took them quite away. You may have heard that in some of your nursery rhyme books. It's a very old rhyme. Consider your verdict, the king said to the jury. A verdict is when they decide if someone did it or didn't do it. Not yet, the rabbit interrupted. There's a great deal more to come before that. Call the first witness, said the king, and the White Rabbit blew 3 blasts on the trumpet and called out, first witness. The first witness was the Hatter. He came in with a teacup in one hand and a piece of bread and butter in the other. And here's our White Rabbit helping run the court with his scroll and his trumpet. He looks quite grand, doesn't he? Well, if the Mad Hatter shows up with his teacup and his bread and butter, you can be sure this is going to be a very silly trial. Oh, and here he is. Spilling tea everywhere and probably leaving crumbs behind him as he comes in. But remember, he's mad, as in crazy, nutty, silly. I beg your majesty's pardon, the Hatter begun, for bringing these things in, but I hadn't finished my tea when I was sent for. You ought to have finished, said the king. Where did you begin? The Hatter looked at the March Hare, who had followed him into the court, arm in arm with the Dormouse. 14th of March, I think it was. 15th, said the March Hare. 16th, added the Dormouse. Write that down, the king said to the jury, and they all wrote down all 3 dates on their slates and then added them up. Take off your hat, the king told the Hatter. It isn't mine, said the Hatter. Stolen, the king exclaimed, and the jury made a note. I keep them to sell, the Hatter added. I have none of my own. I'm a hatter. I make hats. Here the queen stared very hard at the Hatter. He turned pale. Give your evidence, said the king. And don't be nervous, or I'll have you executed on the spot. This did not make the witness feel terribly comfortable. He kept shifting from one foot to the other, looking uneasily at the queen, and he was so nervous he bit a large piece out of his teacup instead of out of his bread and butter. At this moment, Alice felt very strange. She was beginning to grow larger again suddenly. Oh, no. She thought at first that she could get up and leave the court, but she decided to stay as long as there was room for her. I wish you wouldn't squeeze so close to me, said the Dormouse, who was sitting next to her. I can hardly breathe. I think her mushroom is wearing off, don't you? She probably needs to take another bite to stay tiny. I can't help it, said Alice. I'm growing. You have no right to grow here, said the Dormouse. Don't talk nonsense, said Alice. You know you're growing too. Yes, but I grow at a reasonable pace, said the Dormouse. All this time the queen had begun staring hard at the Hatter. Isn't this the singer from the last concert who murdered the time? She asked. The officer, and the Hatter trembled so much that he shook off both of his shoes. Give your evidence, the king repeated angrily, or I'll have you executed whether you're nervous or not. And we are going to stop there today because there's a lot more to the trial. And then we begin the very last chapter. And we'll see what happens to Alice and if she ever becomes the right size and the right place again. So, think about this very silly trial about stealing some tarts. Have a great day. I will see you tomorrow.